called My Mother's Keeper, B.D. Hyman. Barbara Davis Hyman, the daughter of Bette Davis. She has said some unflattering things about her mother. Is it a crime?
Well, I don't really think I've committed a crime. I mean, if some people feel that way, that's certainly their privilege, but I don't consider it a crime. I've written a story of an adult relationship.
When we released the first part of this story, thousands of you wrote, shared, and remembered. It meant something, that behind the glitter of old Hollywood, people could still see the cracks. For every smile on the red carpet, you knew there was often a child crying in the dark. So here we are again, stepping back into that golden haze that hid so much pain, because some stories don't end, they echo. And Hollywood has always been an echo chamber for broken hearts.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Another personal tragedy for actor Marlon Brando. His 25-year-old daughter Cheyenne has committed suicide at her home in Tahiti.
1. Natalie Wood and Maria Gurdin. A mother's ambition, a daughter's tragedy. Before she was Natalie Wood, she was Natasha Gurdin, a shy little girl with big brown eyes and a mother who wanted everything for her, except peace. Maria Gurdin pushed her daughter into acting at age 4, believing fame would protect their family from poverty. But what it brought instead was control. Maria managed every moment of Natalie's life, her roles, her friends, even her emotions. When Natalie once said she was afraid of water, Maria made her film a scene where she had to fall into it, for realism. As Natalie grew into a woman, the pressure never eased. Her mother's grip loosened only when tragedy struck. When Natalie drowned off Catalina Island in 1981 under mysterious circumstances, Maria never recovered, but perhaps she never understood either, that her daughter's fear wasn't of water, but of drowning in expectations. 2. Jean Harlow, the child star pushed by an ambitious mother. Before she was the platinum blonde, Jean Harlow was Harleyan Carpenter, a shy, gentle girl from Kansas City, raised by a mother who refused to give up her own Hollywood dreams. Her mother, Jean Bello, had once wanted to be a star herself. When that failed, she made her daughter live the dream for her. From the moment young Harleyan caught attention for her beauty, her mother took control of her name, her career, and her life. By her early 20s, Jean was already an icon, adored by millions, but completely owned by her mother. Reporters saw glamour, insiders saw exhaustion. Jean was sick, lonely, and trapped by contracts and manipulation. Even in her final days, when her kidneys failed at only 26, her mother wouldn't allow a doctor to come, fearing it might harm her daughter's image. Hollywood mourned a legend, but those who knew her mourned a girl who was never allowed to grow up, a daughter sacrificed to her mother's ambition. 3. Tony Curtis, charm and cruelty behind the Hollywood smile. To audiences, Tony Curtis was irresistible. The dazzling smile, the silver tongue, the man who could make Marilyn Monroe laugh. But his children remember something colder, a father who loved applause more than connection. His daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis, has spoken openly about her complicated relationship with him, calling him a man full of charm, but not full of presence. He chased fame, women, and validation, while leaving his children behind in the shadow of his legend. When Tony died in 2010, he famously left nothing to his 6 children in his will. For Jamie Lee, it wasn't about the money, it was about the message. She once said, "He taught me what not to do." Curtis's tragedy was that he believed performance was love, that if he sparkled enough, the emptiness would fade. But as his family learned, the brighter the spotlight, the deeper the shadows it casts. 4. Debbie Reynolds and Carrie Fisher, love tangled with pain and fame. Few mother-daughter duos were as adored or as exposed as Debbie Reynolds and Carrie Fisher. To the public, they were a Hollywood fairy tale, the sweet MGM darling and her witty, rebellious daughter. But behind the smiles, their relationship swung like a pendulum, between devotion and distance. Debbie grew up in the golden age, where image meant everything. She taught Carrie how to survive in the spotlight, but also how to hide behind it. Carrie, who lived her own battles with addiction and bipolar disorder, once said, "We had a shared disease called fame." There were years when they didn't speak. Yet when Debbie died, just one day after Carrie, the world saw the truth. Theirs was a love too fierce to ever break completely. It was messy, beautiful, and heartbreakingly human. The story of two women who spent their lives learning how to love each other through the glare. 5. Vivien Leigh, brilliance shadowed by madness and distance. Vivien Leigh will forever be remembered as Scarlett O'Hara, fiery, fearless, unforgettable. But her real life was marked by fragility and silence. Behind the charm and beauty, Vivien suffered from severe bipolar disorder long before the world had words to understand it. Her moods swung between brilliance and despair, leaving her daughter, Suzanne, stranded between a mother she adored and a stranger she couldn't reach. Vivien's marriage to Laurence Olivier was a storm of passion and cruelty. When it ended, her illness deepened, and so did her isolation. Suzanne once said, "I had a mother everyone envied, but not one I could hold." Vivien's tragedy wasn't fame, it was loneliness disguised as grace. Hollywood worshipped her image, but the woman behind it faded away long before her final curtain. 6. Patty Duke, child star broken by the system meant to protect her. Before she won an Oscar at 16, Patty Duke was already a veteran of exploitation. Raised under the control of her managers, a couple who became her legal guardians, she was manipulated, medicated, and abused emotionally and financially. When she finally escaped their grip, she carried deep scars, bipolar disorder, trust issues, and a lifetime of confusion over what love was supposed to feel like. In adulthood, she fought back, becoming an advocate for mental health and child protection in Hollywood. Her story is one of survival, a reminder that even in the darkest systems, some spirits refuse to break. But it also asks a haunting question: how many others never got the chance to heal? 7. Shirley Temple, the girl who lost her childhood to a smile. Before there was Disney magic, there was Shirley Temple, the dimpled, dancing child who carried America through the Great Depression. Her curls and laughter were medicine for a hurting nation, but the cost of that comfort was her childhood. Behind the perfect smile were parents who treated fame as the family business. Studios paid millions for her movies, but when Shirley turned 21, only a small part of that fortune remained. She never called it betrayal, only a misunderstanding. Yet the truth was clear. The little girl who lifted millions from despair had no one left to lift her. Her childhood was traded, one tap dance at a time, so that a weary nation could keep smiling. 8. Frank Gumm, the absent father who shaped Judy Garland's sorrow. Long before Judy Garland was a legend, she was a girl standing in the wings, watching her father walk away. Frank Gumm owned a theater, loved music, and loved men, something his conservative world could never accept. The gossip and shame followed him everywhere, forcing the family to move again and again. For little Frances Gumm, Judy, it meant a life of instability, of learning early that love could vanish without warning. Her father's distance left a wound that no applause could fill. In every trembling note Judy ever sang, you can hear it, the echo of a child calling for a father who never truly came back. 9. Dennis Hopper, the artist consumed by chaos. Dennis Hopper was a force of nature, wild, brilliant, untamed. On screen, he was magnetic, but off-screen, he was a storm that no one could stand too close to for long. Hopper grew up under a strict, distant father and carried that anger like a torch into adulthood. Drugs, rage, genius, all collided inside him. His marriages crumbled, his children feared his moods, and his temper could turn love into ashes in minutes. His daughter Marin once said, "He loved us the way he loved art, fiercely, destructively, and never gently." By the end of his life, Hopper softened, finally sober and trying to make peace. But the damage had already been written in his children's memories, proof that brilliance without balance burns everything it touches. 10. Marilyn Monroe's mother, Gladys, the ghost that haunted her forever. Before there was Marilyn, there was Norma Jean, a little girl who never knew safety. Her mother, Gladys Baker, worked at a Hollywood film lab, chasing dreams through exhaustion and delusion. She suffered from severe mental illness and was institutionalized for much of Marilyn's childhood. Norma Jean was passed from family to family, growing up without roots, always waiting for someone to stay. That longing for love and fear of abandonment became the core of the woman the world would later worship. Marilyn once said, "All I wanted was to belong to someone." She spent her life creating the perfect fantasy of being loved. But behind every kiss and spotlight was the child who still waited for her mother to come home. 11. Diana Barrymore. Born to fame, destroyed by it. The Barrymore name was royalty in Hollywood, stage and screen gods whose talent seemed eternal. But Diana Barrymore, daughter of the great John Barrymore, inherited not only his talent, but his demons. Raised in the shadow of brilliance and alcoholism, Diana tried to make her own mark. Studios saw beauty, the public saw promise, but fame didn't fill the emptiness her father left behind. It only amplified it. Addiction, failed marriages, and scandal followed her until her death at 38. Her brother, John Drew Barrymore, would follow the same path, and years later, his daughter Drew would face the same curse. The Barrymore family became a tragic dynasty, proof that sometimes the spotlight isn't a crown at all, but a curse that passes from one generation to the next. 12. Drew Barrymore and Jade Barrymore. Hollywood's curse reborn in the modern age. Drew Barrymore was America's darling before she even lost her baby teeth, stealing hearts in E.T. at 7. But behind the charm was chaos. Her mother, Jade Barrymore, loved the fame as much as her daughter's success, taking Drew to nightclubs, parties, and premieres long before she was old enough to understand any of it. By 13, Drew was addicted to alcohol and cocaine. By 14, she was in rehab. By 15, she was legally emancipated, divorcing her own mother. The tabloids called it rebellion. In truth, it was survival. Years later, Drew rebuilt herself, becoming one of Hollywood's rare phoenixes. But her story stands as a warning that even in the modern age, when the lights seem softer and the words kinder, children are still being raised in the glare of fame instead of the warmth of love. 13. Marlon Brando, the god who couldn't be a father. Marlon Brando changed acting forever. He was raw, magnetic, and terrifyingly real. But the man who could express any emotion on screen couldn't handle the ones waiting for him at home. Brando's childhood was scarred by neglect and alcoholism, and he repeated those wounds with his own children, leaving them adrift in the chaos of his moods and excess. His son Christian went to prison for killing his sister's boyfriend. His daughter Cheyenne took her own life not long after. Brando spent his last years in isolation, haunted by grief. He once said, "The only reason I'm here is because I don't have the courage to be anywhere else." A genius to the world, but to his family, a ghost of the man he might have been. 14. Anthony Hopkins, the cold man who chose distance. Anthony Hopkins is one of the greatest actors alive. Precise, powerful, unforgettable. But behind the mastery lies a man who long ago made peace with loneliness. He has spoken openly about being estranged from his daughter for decades, saying, "People break up, families split, life goes on." There's no anger in his words, just emptiness. He chose art over attachment, control over connection. It's not cruelty exactly, it's armor. Hopkins' characters often stare into the abyss, and maybe that's because he spent a lifetime standing near its edge himself. 15. Jodie Foster, the child who outsmarted Hollywood. Jodie Foster entered show business at 6 and starred in Taxi Driver at 12, a performance so haunting that adults forgot they were watching a child. Her mother, Brandy, managed every step of her career, fiercely protective but also deeply entangled. Jodie grew up, surrounded by scripts, cameras, and expectations, learning early that privacy was a luxury she might never have. Unlike many before her, she escaped the spiral. No scandals, no collapse, just distance. She built walls, learned silence, and turned her intelligence into armor. She once said, "If you don't control your story, someone else will." And maybe that's the quiet victory. A Hollywood child who survived by saying less and meaning every word. 16. Charlie Sheen and Martin Sheen. Fame's inheritance of addiction and rebellion. Martin Sheen built his career on integrity, the calm voice, the moral compass, the man America trusted on screen. But his own home was a battlefield between love and chaos. His son Charlie inherited his father's talent and his demons. While Martin sought meaning in faith and purpose, Charlie found escape in excess. Drugs, scandals, and public breakdowns turned his fame into spectacle. Yet through it all, Martin refused to abandon him. He once said, "There's no way to be a perfect father, but there's a million ways to try." Their bond remained scarred but unbroken, a portrait of two men standing on opposite sides of the same addiction, one fighting it from within, the other from without. Fame may have divided them, but love, even in its most battered form, still tried to find a way through. 17. Francis Ford Coppola and Sofia Coppola, the fragile bridge between genius and gentleness. Francis Ford Coppola reshaped cinema with The Godfather, an epic about family, power, and loyalty. Ironically, those same forces haunted his own household. Growing up, Sofia Coppola watched her father's obsession with perfection consume everything. She adored him, but also lived in his shadow, literally cast in his films, even when the world mocked her for it. After her criticized role in The Godfather Part 3, she withdrew, wounded yet wiser. Francis later said, "I should never have put her through that." Sofia turned that pain into art, directing stories about isolation, expectation, and quiet rebellion. Theirs is one of Hollywood's rare healing tales, proof that sometimes the next generation doesn't have to repeat the cycle. They can rewrite it. 18. Liza Minnelli, inheriting Judy Garland's broken crown. Liza Minnelli was born in the spotlight, the daughter of Judy Garland, a woman whose voice could shake heaven, but whose heart was always breaking. Liza inherited not just her mother's talent, but her chaos. She adored Judy, even when the world watched her crumble. In interviews, Liza said, "I didn't want to save her. I just wanted to be near her." But pain is contagious, especially in Hollywood. Liza's own life became a mirror. Fame, addiction, turbulent love, the desperate search for stability. She rose high, winning Oscars, Grammys, endless applause, yet carried her mother's ghost wherever she went. For both women, the stage was safer than home. And in every note Liza sings, there's still a tremor, the echo of a little girl trying to keep her mother's song alive. 19. Bette Davis, the legend accused by her own daughter. Bette Davis built her empire through fire. Sharp-tongued, brilliant, unbreakable, she was the woman no man could silence, the actress who demanded respect in a man's world. But power on screen didn't make her gentle at home. In 1985, her daughter Barbara B.D. Hyman published My Mother's Keeper, a book that painted Bette as domineering, emotionally abusive, and obsessed with control. Bette was devastated, her reputation torn apart not by a rival but by her own child. The truth, as always, is complicated. Those who worked with Bette remembered her as passionate, perfectionist, sometimes cruel, but also deeply lonely. Her daughter saw a mother who loved conditionally, who turned affection into performance. In one interview, Bette said quietly, "A mother is only as happy as her least happy child." For her, that meant a lifetime of guilt and misunderstanding. A woman who conquered Hollywood but could never win at home. 20. Modern Fame, Part 2. When the Spotlight Becomes a Cage. Once, the danger came from the studios, contracts, stage mothers, and image-obsessed producers. Now, it comes from within our own homes. Children grow up on camera, their milestones, tears, and tantrums turned into content. Parents call it sharing, but the world calls it entertainment. The cycle hasn't ended. It's evolved. Where Hollywood once owned the child, the internet now does. There are no studio walls anymore, only screens. And behind every viral smile, there may still be a trembling voice asking the same question Christina Crawford asked half a century ago. Why wasn't I enough? Because fame, no matter its form, always hungers for something, and it always takes first from those who can't yet say no. The names change, but the ache remains. Hollywood no longer wears fur coats. It wears filters. And behind every smile, then or now, there's still someone whispering in the dark. Was I ever really loved? Or just watched?